Today's speaker is Dave Edlund. Dave is the coordinator of the Midwestern Eastern Whippoorwill Project and a natural resources environmental sciences master's student at U of I. Welcome, Dave. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Aaron. Can you hear me? Just checking in.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, like Aaron mentioned, I'm Dave Edlund. I'm a master's student in the Ward Lab of Ornithology here at the NRES department, U of I. And today I'm going to discuss my research on eastern whippoorwills and their wintering ecology and migration in Florida. So in this talk, I'm going to discuss nightjars in general, whippoorwills specifically, other research in the Ward Lab, Florida, and if there's time, I have a short quiz for everybody. Um, okay. So first, a bit about myself. I haven't always been into birds. I moved to Champaign in 2013 for a job fixing cars. And I realized I didn't like that after about 6 years before I decided to go to Parkland Community College. And it was while at Parkland that I studied abroad to South Africa. And this is where I learned that working with wildlife could be a career. So in undergrad, I got my first foray into wildlife research and field work concerning the frosted elfin butterfly. You'll see here. Um, but then I got the opportunity to work with several other critters, including ticks and bats. And then upon transferring to U of I began bird banding and realized that working with birds is a lot of fun. A lot more fun than working with ticks. Um, since then, I have taken every opportunity I could to learn, volunteer, and gain experience working with birds, including saw-whet owls, grassland birds like this bobolink, soras, and the occasional pileated woodpecker. And of course, one of our local nightjars, the whippoorwill. But first, I wanted to address the question, what is a nightjar? Just a few years ago, I had no idea what a nightjar was, and that's where I want to start. So nightjars are also known as goat suckers. Their order and family names, Caprimulgiformes and Caprimulgidae, mean loosely goat sucker. Uh, that term is quite old and pretty ancient, in fact. In History of Animals by Aristotle, he wrote of the infamous goat suckers, slothful birds that would drink the milk of goats, causing them to go blind and give no more milk. Though this is the first written account of the term goat sucker, appears that this term had been already been in use for quite some time. So what about the term nightjar? Nightjars are, in fact, out at night, so that makes sense. And the jar may come from another name for nightjars, the eve chir, an onomatopoeic name referring to the bird's chirring call. However, Jared Del Rosso, author of an upcoming book about the cultural significance of whippoorwills from the University of Denver, posits another theory. Shepherds, while tending their flocks late at night, were likely frightened when flushing a nightjar from the ground. As I have experienced, flushing a nightjar can be a jarring experience. Perhaps in retaliation, angry shepherds put forth this goat-sucking rumor, which I don't find surprising, as nightjars have long been considered ill omens and messengers of death. So there are 98 species of nightjars in the Caprimulgidae family. They are found on every continent but Antarctica, and this surprised me. New Zealand has no nightjars either. Though they're not likely harbingers of doom. Uh, each species is rather unique. Some have over-the-top names like diabolical nightjar. Others have so-called ear tufts, like the great-eared nightjar. The standard wing, pennant-winged, and sickle-winged nightjars have flashy breeding plumages, and many have unique colors and patterns like the swamp nightjar and spot-tailed nightjar. Due to their nocturnal habits and cryptic plumage, nightjars tend to be understudied and less understood than other species of birds. But there are a a few we know nearly nothing about. The Itombwe nightjar is known from a single specimen found in the Democratic Republic of Congo in 1955. The Cayenne nightjar is also known from a single specimen, but was found in French Guiana. The Jamaican parake is known from just a handful of specimens, but has not been positively identified since 1860 and is now considered extinct. And finally, the Netchisar nightjar. This species is known from only a single wing specimen taken from a dead individual in southern Ethiopia. And despite hundreds of hours of nocturnal surveys, there have been no confirmed sightings of this bird. Though they are all unique, nightjars share many similar qualities. They rely upon cryptic plumage for camouflage as they roost on the ground. They use their large eyes to see and hunt for insects at night. They also have a tapetum lucidum. It's an organ in their eyes that reflects light, increasing their visibility at night. In addition to their large cavernous mouths, nightjars have long rictal bristles, as you see here, around their mouth to better sense prey. Nightjars also have these eye slits, allowing them to see even when their eyes are closed. You can see them here on the eastern whippoorwill, uh, but it's more obvious on the potu above it, um, highlighted here. Um, They also have pectinate claws. That is a comb-like structure on one toe. In a review of 118 bird families, only 17 have pectinate claws. Their function is unknown. Obvious explanation would be grooming, but research with barn owls shows that may not be the case. We have several species of nightjar in North America, including a few that you can see here. Um, Most likely here in Illinois, including the common nighthawk and the Chuck-Will's widow. Um, Common nighthawks you can probably see pretty much throughout the whole state. Chuck-Will's widows, you're going to have to go down south a bit. But then, of course, we have the eastern whippoorwill. Uh, Eastern whippoorwill is an iconic bird of eastern North American forests. They're often heard, but rarely seen. Uh, Whippoorwills are known for their persistent calls of will during warm spring and summer nights, so much so that they're often referenced in songs, poems, literature. Um, However, they have experienced a dramatic 70% decline since 1970 and has since been listed as near threatened by the IUCN. Um, Here you can see their breeding distribution in red, migration distribution in yellow, and overwintering in blue. Uh, Whippoorwill breeding habitat varies throughout their range, but they typically inhabit dry deciduous forests and/or mixed open canopy forests with an open understory. Um, these forests are often adjacent to or near open areas such as prairies and savannas, as you can see here in the Sand Prairie Scrub Oak Nature Preserve photo. Um, and they're often found on edges and ecotones. That's where a forest will meet another habitat, such as a prairie. Furthermore, they appear to avoid large, heavily forested areas, more so indicating their preference for that edge. And on the bottom right here, you'll see what an open canopy looks like. This has important implications for conservation of the species, as uh, from what we understand, they tend to prefer managed forests. Whippoorwills are aerial insectivores, meaning they feed on insects, mostly moths, while flying. They do this by sallying, where they spot an insect while perched on a tree. They fly out, catch it, and fly back to perch before going out for another moth. They use their large mouths and rectal bristles to catch prey before swallowing them. And we have a couple examples of their prey species here. We have an imperial moth and a Promethea silk moth. They don't really build nests, The female will lay up to two eggs directly onto leaf litter, where both adults will incubate the eggs for about 19 to 21 days. At some point, the weight of the birds incubating will create a depression in the leaf litter that may resemble a nest. And upon hatching, the chicks are semi-precocial and are able to move, but their eyes are still closed and they rely heavily on their parents. The parents will provide regurgitated insects to the chicks, and incubating adults and chicks. They both rely upon their camouflage to remain hidden from predators. As was mentioned previously, whippoorwills are experiencing declines across their breeding range. This project, what we have dubbed the Midwest Eastern Whippoorwill Monitoring Project, focused on revisiting breeding bird atlas survey blocks in 5 states: Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Missouri, to determine what factors may be driving the decline. Uh, we we selected 24 atlas blocks in each state in which we'd survey for whippoorwills to determine occupancy, so where they are, where they're not, capture nocturnal insects with light traps so we could quantify their food supply, and collect fecal samples so that we could do DNA metabarcoding to see what they're actually preying on. So our plan was to visit each site twice, count the number of birds, collect insects, and this took place in the summers of 2022 and 2023. And we're in the middle of analyzing all this data now, but this was a lot, so we're still working on it. And I wanted to show here a dramatic representation of what their habitat often looks like, or what habitat loss often looks like. On the left here, you'll see the best site with our most number of detected whippoorwills. Here on the left is a northern Wisconsin site. We detected 67 total whippoorwills in the area. And on the right is one of our worst sites. This is in St. Charles, in Illinois. You can see the dramatic difference in greenness. The area St. Charles is highly urbanized, and we had zero whippoorwills detected. So this definitely shows the one of the challenges that whippoorwills are facing. But that brings us to winter. We know quite a bit about the whippoorwill's breeding ecology, but over the past few years, more and more research has been conducted to understand the whippoorwill's winter ecology. And as for a greater understanding of what we would call their full annual cycle. So many birds, migratory birds, they have their breeding period, migration, and wintering. Here you'll see GPS location data of whippoorwills tagged and recaptured on their breeding grounds. Each study investigated different aspects of the whippoorwill's winter ecology, and you'll see some very brief explanations of their findings. You'll notice, like in the range map previously, whippoorwills from throughout the breeding range funnel into Austin and the Austin and Houston area and continue on into the wintering grounds, most of which are in the portion of central Mexico, or southern Mexico rather, and parts of Central America. All of these studies here utilize GPS tags. So this is what most of our understanding of the wintering ecology is. It's difficult to do work in some of these areas, so we've had to rely on technology, but it does limit our scope of understanding. And you'll see Florida there is suspiciously empty. So over the years, Mike Ward has been traveling to Mexico in search of whippoorwills to get firsthand knowledge of the wintering grounds. I don't know the full timeline of the efforts, but so far, finding whippoorwills has been successful. That is until 2 years ago, when in collaboration with Dr. Roberto Sosa and his graduate students, that we traveled to Oaxaca and we actually found an eastern whippoorwill in San Mateo Yetla. in the mountains of Oaxaca. Uh, I have a just a fun video here of a common paraki that we are also researching at, in the area. Let's see if I can get this to play. Oop. So you can see this bird in hand here. Common parakis are quite large. They're much larger than a whippoorwill. So this is all to say that studying whippoorwills in Central America uh, is possible, but it is quite difficult. There are a lot of logistical challenges preventing us from working in the areas, uh, whether it's time, money, access to locations. As you can see, some of these dots here represent GPS locations of whippoorwills, and they're in the mountains. They're very difficult to get to. You're gonna work. There we go. All right, here's this map again. Of the 150 plus whippoorwills that have been tracked in previous studies, none were tracked in Florida, but we know they overwinter there. So I propose, why don't we don't know what the breeding status of these birds in Florida is. So I propose a pilot study to determine if it would be viable for my master's project. Um, so I went to, where am I? Yeah, we chose two study areas where whippoorwills have been detected on eBird, Archbold Biological Station, and Avon Park Air Force Range. We had a few goals. We wanted to tag whippoorwills with archival GPS tags to find their breeding locations, collect fecal samples to determine what they're preying on, and observe their behavior and habitat to inform later research. And the primary impetus behind this project was that because reaching the wintering grounds in Central America is so difficult, why not Florida? Um, no one has ever studied them in the state before, so this seemed like the logical step. And that's exactly what Mike and I did in 2024. In short, studying whippoorwills in Florida is feasible. We managed to catch and tag 10 birds and collect seven fecal samples in just 6 days. We noted a few behaviors as well. They're mostly active for only about 1.5 hours after sunset, which may be due to the cold weather. They don't typically vocalize, so whereas on their breeding grounds, you can go out and hear the whippoorwill call. They're typically silent until we play their call. Um, they're often found in dense scrub, palmetto, scrub hammock. So this type of habitat is very different from their breeding grounds. Large trees are not always present. We associate whippoorwills with more heavily forested areas, but this is quite different, quite unique for what we understand about these birds. So onto this past winter, I returned to Florida in January and remained for 6 weeks to achieve the following goals. I wanted to conduct point counts to figure out where whippoorwills are present. Uh, I want to know what habitats they're using, determine what insects are available, collect fecal samples to determine what they're preying on, deploy more GPS tags to determine their breeding locations, and finally, capture birds tagged in 2024 to retrieve GPS tags. Point count, so explanation of some of the methods we used. Point counts are a survey method used to tally bird detections. Point counts is just birding on a time limit. Whenever we see or hear a bird, it gets marked down on our sheet. We tracked all species, so not just whippoorwills. Like in this example here, we have eastern screech owls, barred owls, and sometimes we hear nothing or see or hear nothing at all. So we managed to visit 69 point count locations throughout the state, all the way as far north as Gainesville and all the way down to the about as far south in the Everglades as we could get on the mainland. We did 138 of these point counts and detected 42 whippoorwills. And you see here, so the orange crosses are our point count locations. Every site had whippoorwills. Insect trapping. Uh, our insect traps consisted of 2-gallon buckets with a UV light hanging over them that will attract flying insects, all powered by a small battery. And we scheduled them to illuminate at sunset, and they would run for 1.5 hours. This is an example from the Midwest of what one of these bucket traps would look like. Interestingly, it seems like Florida has no insects during the winter. Far fewer moths and flies were trapped. So we're questioning, what are they actually eating out there? I will note we are also working on, in the lab, we're working on a device that we are dubbing the Moth-O-Matic. This is a video-based insect trapping system, except we're not trapping them. This is a method of photographing insects so that we do not have to collect it and euthanize them. So this is currently in the works. Not only, I mean, collecting, storing, and identifying all the insects is very time consuming and labor intensive. And we're hoping we could mitigate that using these devices, and we won't have to kill any insects. Banding and tagging. So we would use a speaker, an MP3 player. We would play whippoorwill calls. We would call this conspecific playback. And we would draw whippoorwills into mist nets. Often, I started using these cardboard and foam decoys here because the whippoorwills proved to be difficult to catch. But the males do get quite aggressive when they hear that whippoorwill call and they see what they think is another whippoorwill invading their territory. So we have had success catching them. Each bird was then banded with a USGS aluminum band. We would take all the typical measurements like wing length, tail length. But then for birds that are heavy enough, we would put on a GPS tag that you'll see here. If birds are too light, they don't get a GPS tag because we don't want it to impact the bird's mobility or its quality of life. Because we need it to fly, we need it to be able to migrate to its breeding grounds and come back with that tag. Because all the information and data that these GPS tags collect stays on the tag, which means I have to catch that same bird again to get all of that data. And here in this illustration, you'll see how that harness works. It is essentially, you can think of it like a climbing harness that you would wear if you're climbing up a mountain. It's quite secure and it allows the bird to move freely with minimal to no impact. Each bird was then placed in a parchment-lined cardboard box, a shoebox, for about 10 minutes. This allowed two things. It allowed the bird to reacclimate to the darkness after we had our headlamps on, banding and processing the bird, but it also allowed time for the bird to defecate so that we could collect fecal samples for later genetic analysis. So I'm very interested in understanding what type of habitats they use. So I did a number of habitat surveys throughout the state at point count locations. Measurements included canopy density. So we use a device to measure it's a metric to that tells us how open the canopy is. So if you look at the grid of pictures here on the right hand side, these are canopy photos. The one on the top has quite a bit more openness than the two on the bottom. And this openness is important for whippoorwills because we theorize that they are using these breaks in the canopy to, this is where they're foraging for moths, because this is where moonlight can break through the canopy and illuminate moths for foraging. Um, but also, I wanted to highlight here that the habitat in Florida is quite diverse. It's a very heterogeneous landscape. There's something like nearly 230 types of habitat. Um, so it's quite varied. So parsing apart what habitat whippoorwills are preferring is going to be a challenge. And I have some very rough graph here of some of my results. Um, they prefer forest. So areas where whippoorwills were detected uh, had a greater proportion of forest. But I need to work on this some more because you'll also see that developed is also quite high. And that may be um, maybe due to the fact that many of our surveys were conducted on roads and trails. So still working that out. And here's some other results here. You can see another graphic showing the point count locations and detection locations and capture locations. I do want to note here that uh, Gainesville had our fewest number of whippoorwills. That may be due to temperature because we did actually have a few days below zero in Gainesville at that time. Our best areas were Archbold Biological Station and Avon Park Air Force Range in the middle. We did detect a couple of whippoorwills in Naples, Florida, and then we detected several in the Everglades, but I did not get permission to catch birds there, so I did not. Um, but the one on the very, very bottom there, we did actually detect in mangrove, which is quite surprising. And here are some of my preliminary results. Um, total of 44 whippoorwills detected in the state. Uh, I managed to recapture two, but only retrieved one GPS tag because one had fallen off and I have no idea where it is. Um, and interestingly, in this table, average insect mass, I'm comparing the average mass between Florida sites and Midwestern sites, and you'll see here in grams that the Florida sites have very little insects compared to the Midwest. So that is another mystery that we need to work on. Because it just begs the question, what are these birds eating? And here's what a typical night looks like when you're surveying for whippoorwills. We're going out there in the dark, setting up nets. We're waiting for the sun to go down. And when you do see a whippoorwill, it often looks like the picture on the right. It's a very interesting experience to be walking around, whether it's the Everglades or the uh, the Central Ridge throughout Florida. It's been quite the experience. We did catch quite a lot of screech owls in several areas in Florida. Uh, in 2024, we heard a couple, but in 2025, we caught about seven. We were not trying to catch these birds. They were responding quite aggressively to the whippoorwill calls we were playing. Um, and both species were inhabiting many of the same areas. So it does make us question whether screech owls are actually preying on whippoorwills. But here are several of the whippoorwills that we did catch. So this past year, we did manage to catch nine of them. Um, yes, none of them were caught. And this bird here in the middle, that was my nemesis bird. Very first night, I tried catching him, and I didn't catch him until second to last night. It wasn't until I found his the middle of his territory and used this foam and cardboard decoy. Unfortunately, so this bird was caught in 2024, banded, and affixed with a GPS tag, but the tag was not there. So he got a new tag, and I'll hopefully catch him this upcoming February. But the one bird that we did catch, the one recapture with a tag, on the very first night uh, back to Florida in 2025, we captured him at Archbold Biological Station. He's an after second year male, so he's an older bird, and according to the GPS data, he was breeding in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which is very unexpected. This is a short distance away, much shorter than we would have expected, and pretty close to the coast. Here, here is Camp Lejeune. Fun fact: this is where I was actually stationed back when I was in the Marines, and the orange pins here are on the base, and the blue is about a mile away in a private logging operation. So these orange pins are the bird's breeding range. And then after the breeding season, many whippoorwills will move to a post-breeding location. This is a pretty short distance away, and some of the theories that we have about why they might do this is that the breeding range possibly has better habitat for nesting. It may support more insects so that they can feed their young. And then the post-breeding range may support more, um, may have habitat which is more conducive to, how do I say this? Better habitat for roosting to avoid predators. But it was interesting that he decided to choose this logging operation because even in this satellite photo here, you can see that it's heavily forested. So I have plenty of next steps for this research. I am currently in the middle of all my data analysis for the past 2 years. I'll then be returning in 2026 to collect more. We have since finished sorting all of our insects. I think it took maybe a week to sort all those insects, whereas all the ones from the Midwest took about 2 years. So very few insects. I'm considering incorporating Christmas bird count data from Florida. I have this side project looking into Bergman's rule as it relates to whippoorwills. You'll see this photo here on the bottom left using this grid paper. What I'm hoping to do is calculate wing shape and size using software, and I can compare that the wing shape and size of birds in Florida to birds elsewhere, like from here in Illinois, and see if there's a difference. So Bergman rules states that further north, animals tend to get larger to conserve body heat. For migratory birds, if you're flying further north, you're going to want pointier wings. So if these Florida birds are short distance migrants and Bergman's rule is correct, then we would expect to see less pointy wings. I'm also considering incorporating eBird data into my analysis. You'll see on the top right there, Florida gets a lot of whippoorwills. So I want to incorporate that data to increase my sample size and improve my analysis. So next, I would like to thank everybody involved, everybody in the Ward Lab that has helped me with this research, all the field work, everybody at Archbold Biological Station, who pretty much let me have the run of the place, provided support while there, housing, Champaign County Audubon Society for providing funding. I forgot to add a logo here, but the Florida Ornithological Society as well. They also provided funding. And yeah, I think that's it, everybody. Okay, I think I have plenty of time. You can play at home. I showed you what typical habitat in Illinois would look like for these birds, and I want to see. Well, you can see amongst yourselves how well can you identify eastern whippoorwill habitat. I'm going to show you a photo. You say you think to yourself whether you think a whippoorwill was there or not. So this is the location at Avon Park Air Force Range. We did not catch any whippoorwills here. This is also at Avon Park. Not here either. Avon Park Air Force Range again. This is a scrub habitat. There are actually 4 whippoorwills in this area. This is the most southern location in the Everglades. Yes, this mangrove habitat had 1 whippoorwill detected. This is at Archbold Biological Station. Got a lot of trees there, but no whippoorwills. This is Avon Park Air Force Range again. This is adjacent to cow pasture. And we did catch a whippoorwill here. This is Picayune Strand State Forest outside of Naples. This is a very interesting habitat. It was once a large logging operation that has since they have been what's the word? Restoring into a type of swamp habitat. No whippoorwills there. And this is Everglades National Park near the missile silo. This is a glades marsh. This is primarily grassland. And we did detect a whippoorwill here. This was probably the most surprising because there's no large trees within about a mile of this spot. And then I think this is the last one. This is Archbold Biological Station. And we did not catch any whippoorwills here. I forget what I wanted to say here, other than just Florida is a very interesting place. They're famous for crocodiles, manatees, and Florida scrub jays. They also have whippoorwills. If you ever get a chance to go and explore the wilderness there, I would highly recommend it. And with that, I'll take any questions. If you are not already, please follow the Ward Lab Instagram and see what kind of other research we're up to. All right, thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Dave. That was a really excellent presentation. I learned a lot and it was
Thank you.
really great to just hear about your research. We do have some questions in the chat, and while we start going through those, I invite you to continue putting questions in if you have them. But we'll start off with one here. It was asked kind of before is what can people do to help the whippoorwills? A lot of people have mentioned that, they used to hear them all the time a long time ago and they're not anymore. Are there any ways that the general public can help support the research that you're doing or other efforts?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention this, but there's a couple, the big things that are threatening whippoorwills are typically attributed to habitat loss and insect declines. Habitat loss, we're cutting down forests at a fast rate, and the use of pesticides is of great concern to our insect populations. And so those are big concerns, and I would say those concerns are best addressed probably through legislation and supporting our politicians that are interested in preserving and conserving habitat. You could choose not to use insecticides to help the moth populations. Yeah. I would also say supporting forest management. So from what we understand, it is important to manage forests for many species, whether that's controlled burns, forest thinning, cutting out invasive species like honeysuckle. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks. I also wonder, you had mentioned, that you used eBird to help choose your study sites in Florida, and you mentioned Christmas bird counts. Do you want to talk about those engagement pieces too that people can help contribute?
Yeah. Anybody can use eBird. You can download it today and start using it. It is a like iNaturalist, it is a far-reaching and very popular citizen science app that you can use on your phone. That data is used all the time by researchers. The Cornell lab does a lot of work to maintain it. Um, um, it's vetted. Um, yeah, that's probably the easiest way that anybody can contribute to bird research.
Great. This was an interesting question. Do you have any plans to integrate AI into your um, process of like handling your data, like identifying bird calls, or maybe helping look through the insects that you track with that new Morphomatic device that's being developed?
Yes. So part of my research, I will not be incorporating AI, but we are planning on using it for insect identification with the Morphomatic. That's going to be a big component. Um, so for the Morphomatic, I'm mostly involved in the physical design and construction, but we're working with um, engineers and computer scientists to help develop the algorithms for identification of these insects because to to do to do this properly, we have to take thousands of photos to train models that will be able to identify all of these insects, and it would take many hours for people to do that. I have been involved with research where we have to go through game camera photos looking at deer or rabbits, and is very time consuming. So, in this context, AI will be very important.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really interesting. There was a question about climate change and if that's had an influence on breeding ranges and migratory patterns. Has that might not be something that you're looking at in your research, but do you know anything about um, climate change impacts on the whippoorwills?
So, whippoorwills specifically, let me think. While I'm thinking, I'll plug another um, Ward Lab member. Um, Wendy Dorman is looking, she is working on models that will track range shifts for most of the birds in North America. She's working on these applications um, that will model how, um, what is the word? How range shifts will occur as climate change continues. So she's working on that, and whippoorwill specifically. I'm trying to. I haven't given that much thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Um, you said was it Wendy? Wendy Dorman?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'm gonna pop that into the chat for people. If they want to follow along with her research. Let's see. We had a question on if you think the type of trees influences the habitat interest.
Yes. So that's something we're looking into with the Midwest Whippoorwill project. Um, we suspect that oak species are going to be most important for whippoorwills because they support um, uh, a diverse number of moth species, um, more so than others. Um, so part of our analysis will be including data on white oak, red oak, but we're also including other species to see if there's an association with species like cedars. What I have a list of about 20 trees that I need to map for this analysis, but our suspicion is oaks.
Great. We had a question that asked, why do nightjars like to sit in the middle of the road at night? I want to know the story of behind that question, but is that something that you can speak to?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, what was it? In Mexico, I believe um, they were called tapacaminos, which I think roughly translates to speed bumps. It's very common for nightjars to sit on roads. I've heard it may be because they like to, so the blacktop will warm up throughout the day and then they'll sit on it for warmth. But I think I think it's more likely the case that they're going there to forage. So I have seen whippoorwills and buff-collared nightjars forage from the ground in trails because, like I mentioned earlier, that whippoorwills like foraging in breaks in canopy cover, and a road is a perfect break where moonlight can pass through the canopy. Um, so I think that's the main reason.
Interesting. That makes sense when you think about it, right?
Mhm.
Okay, our last question that we have is if you could talk a little bit about the predators of whippoorwills.
Yes. Um, so, from my understanding, the major predators of whippoorwills are going to be owls, particularly barred owls. Um, Another whippoorwill grad student here, Holly, she had barred owls who became aware of her netting operation. This barred owl would come around and wait for her to start playing whippoorwill calls so it could come and snatch one. So she had to move her net. Um, we hear them quite often when we're playing whippoorwill calls. But then I would suspect um, probably snakes are going after birds on the ground, probably chicks and eggs, um, and presumably those eastern screech owls.
Okay, we had another question come in. Could night lighting attract insects that whippoorwills can forage?
So that's been talked about. I know I think it's true for common nighthawks, but from another whippoorwill researcher at the Ohio State University, they found that whippoorwills are avoiding brightly lit areas, particularly during migration. Um, that is something that we're incorporating into our Midwest whippoorwill project is artificial light at night. Because it may be the case that they're avoiding areas with too much light. That could be a predator avoidance strategy because they are so reliant on their camouflage. So being in a very lit area is not conducive. Um, but I will say, I didn't mention, I forgot to mention it here, but there are plenty of whippoorwills being detected in suburban areas and urban areas in Florida. That doesn't seem to be the case on the breeding grounds. So maybe.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dave. Again, this is really interesting, and thank you for spending time to answer all of these great questions that our participants had. So we're going to wrap up today, and I did drop again in the chat our season 3 of Wildlife continues through the end of this month. You can subscribe to our newsletter. And if you're interested in what's coming next in Everyday Environment next spring, we'll be exploring invasive species. So that's what's up and coming. But again, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dave, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. Thank you for having me.